It was another ordinary morning in the small town of Maplewood, where the air smelled like freshly brewed coffee and pancakes sizzling on the griddle. Inside the old diner on Main Street, a young woman named Lena tied her apron around her waist and pushed back a loose strand of hair that fell near the scar on her cheek. The scar, deep, uneven, and crimson in tone, ran from just below her eye down to her jawline. She had stopped trying to hide it long ago. Makeup couldn't cover it, and the pain it represented wasn't something foundation could fix. Lena had been working at the diner for 2 years now, ever since the accident that changed her life. She'd once dreamed of becoming a chef, opening her own bakery one day, and filling it with the smell of fresh bread and joy. But fate had other plans. A car crash had taken her parents, and left her with the scar she now carried like a permanent reminder of that tragic night. Still, Lena showed up every morning with a smile, even when people didn't treat her kindly. Some customers were polite, but many weren't. They whispered when she passed, avoided eye contact, and sometimes even laughed. That morning, as the sun streamed through the diner windows, a group of young adults came in, loud, entitled, and full of themselves. They took a seat in Lena's section. She greeted them with a polite, "Good morning. What can I get started for you?" They ordered carelessly, cracking jokes about the menu, then about her apron, and finally, about her face. One of them, a man with slick back hair, smirked and said loudly, "Hey, sweetheart, did you get into a fight with a cat or something?" The others laughed. Lena froze for a moment but quickly looked down at her notepad, pretending not to hear. She'd learned long ago that silence hurt less than reacting. Still, her heart clenched painfully. In the corner booth, an older woman who'd been a regular watched the scene quietly. She shook her head, whispering, "Kids these days," but no one else said a word. Lena served their food with a steady hand, ignoring their snide remarks and laughter. When they finally left, they didn't leave a tip, just a crumpled napkin that said, "Smile more, maybe people will like you." She threw it away quickly before anyone else could see. Later that afternoon, while she was wiping down the counter, a luxury black Range Rover pulled into the parking lot. Everyone's eyes turned to look. From the car stepped a man in his early 30s, tall, confident, dressed in a brown velvet suit that screamed wealth and grace. His name was Ethan Cole, a name that would soon change Lena's life forever. Ethan was a self-made millionaire, known for his real estate empire, but few people knew about his humble beginnings. He'd grown up in this very town, poor, bullied, and always told he'd never make it. He hadn't been back in years, not since he made his first million and left to start over in the city. But today, nostalgia had brought him back. He walked into the diner, the little bell above the door ringing softly. Lena looked up from the counter, surprised by his presence. "Welcome. Table for one," she asked, trying to sound cheerful. He smiled kindly. "Yes, please. You must be Lena." She blinked, confused. "Have we met?" "Not yet," he said with a grin. "But I've heard a lot about this diner. My parents used to bring me here when I was a kid." Lena smiled faintly, leading him to a booth. She didn't notice the people in the diner whispering, eyes following the expensive car outside. Ethan ordered a coffee and a slice of homemade apple pie, the diner's specialty. As she served him, the same group of young adults from earlier returned, laughing loudly. They stopped short when they saw Ethan. Clearly, they recognized him. He was famous enough to be featured in magazines and TV interviews. The rich man who'd come from nothing. One of them muttered, "Whoa, isn't that Ethan Cole? The real estate guy?" Ethan looked up and smiled faintly but said nothing. His attention was on Lena, who was now wiping her hands nervously on her apron. "So," Ethan said softly, "you work here full-time?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. It's not much, but it pays the bills." "I like that," he said. "Hard work. Dedication. You remind me of someone I used to know." Before she could reply, the group began laughing again, this time louder. "Careful, Mr. Millionaire," one of them called out mockingly. "She might scare you with that face." The diner went silent. Ethan slowly turned to face them, his eyes cold but calm. "Is that supposed to be funny?" he asked, his tone razor-sharp. The laughter died instantly. He stood up, his voice steady but full of authority. "Let me tell you something. That scar you're laughing at probably has more strength and pain behind it than you'll ever know. You think beauty is in smooth skin or fancy clothes. You're wrong. Real beauty is in resilience. In surviving when life tries to break you. Everyone in the diner stared in silence. He turned back to Lena, who was frozen, eyes glistening. I see a woman who shows up every day, works hard, and still smiles at people who don't deserve her kindness. That's real beauty. Lena's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. I'm opening a new restaurant chain across the state. I could use someone like you, someone with heart, grit, and experience. If you're interested, come by this address tomorrow morning. He placed the card on the counter, along with $100 tip for his coffee and pie. Then he smiled and said softly, don't ever let the world tell you your worth. It doesn't get to decide that. You do. And with that, he left the diner. Lena stood still, her heart racing. The card trembled in her hands. The group of young adults quietly slipped out, avoiding her gaze. The older woman at the counter clapped softly. You see, honey, she said, angels don't always have wings. That night, Lena sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the card. She thought about every cruel word, every stare, every time she'd cried herself to sleep. Then she thought about Ethan's words, about worth, strength, and beauty. The next morning, she gathered her courage and went to the address on the card. It wasn't just any restaurant, it was a gleaming, modern establishment still under construction, with a big sign that read, Cole's Kitchen, a place to start again. Ethan met her at the entrance, smiling. Welcome, Lena. I was hoping you'd come. He offered her a job as the head waitress and later, after seeing her talent and dedication, promoted her to manager. The scar never disappeared, but for the first time, she didn't want it to. It became her symbol of survival, her reminder that she had endured and risen above. Months later, as the restaurant opened to roaring success, Ethan introduced her at the launch event. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, and Lena, once ridiculed for her scar, stood proudly on stage, her face shining with confidence. She's the heart of this place, Ethan told the crowd. This restaurant is dedicated to people like Lena, the ones who've been broken but chose to rebuild. The audience applauded. Tears filled Lena's eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. From that day on, her life changed forever. She became an inspiration in her town, a voice for those who'd been judged by appearances. And as she stood in front of the diner one evening, looking up at the sunset, she whispered softly, "Thank you for seeing me." And that, my friends, is how a scar turned into a story of strength, kindness, and second chances. Never judge someone by what you see on the surface, you have no idea what battles they've fought beneath. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful and emotional stories that remind us all that kindness still exists. Because sometimes, one act of compassion can change in life.